Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon, and welcome to this very special memorial service for our friend, our brother, our partner, our business colleague, and a very active member of our society that recently left this world, Mr. Faiez Dollie. My name is Hassan Tabada. I am a teammate, but also a mentee of this very special gentleman that we're paying tribute to today. So I see in the program there's a lot of people with a lot of vowels in their names. I am going to say their names properly and fully. But today is a very strange day for me because when we leave here, there's a football fixture that's on the go, and you'll see that this program's punctuated with a lot of football because, and I'll get to that point of Faiz's life, but today Manchester United play Newcastle United, and the reason that's significant is because Faiz was a massive Newcastle United supporter, only because he wanted to emulate his hero, Alan Shearer. And we were able to see him grow as a footballer, as a member of Woodstock Wanderers. Now, we saw very different sides of Faiz that his colleagues might not have seen. And Woodstock Wanderers was a very special football club. It was more than football. And Faiz, as the co-founder with Ishmael Harris and Ishmael's dad, Putamana Harris, Abdurrahman Harris, who had very important roots there at the William Street Mosque, Sulaimania Mosque in William Street, Woodstock, encouraged young people who they thought had potential but would idly sit there in the sun, including myself as a 17-year-old, and Faiz would say, and Ishmael would say to us, come in, let's play football. And I'm happy to say that the core of those young people, through Faiz's influence and through Ishmael's influence, are still with us today. Two of them have passed on from natural causes, but if you grew up in Woodstock, between the lower main road and the top main road, there was often very little options for you. You either went the straight and narrow, or you were lured into gangs or drugs and that kind of thing. It's not the biscuit mill that we all see now, this very soft-boiled side of Woodstock. We can all hold our own on the street and on the football field. But Faiz showed us that there's more to it. There's more to life, and that we can actually shoot the lights out. And then we later on, as we experience Faiz, we find out that he was involved in so much more, I remember as a 19-year-old doing an internship at the Star newspaper in Johannesburg, very lonely, far from home, homesick. Who knocks on my door? Faiez Dollie, to find out how I'm doing. He took up a trip to Joburg for some business and came to look me up. Took me out for a meal, bought me a Man United t-shirt. I was very shocked about that. So I actually stand here and I want Newcastle United to beat Manchester United properly today for my friend Faiez Dollie. So just a little bit about the program, and we're very grateful to be shooting it in this amazing studio. It's a hybrid event. What that means is some of it is physical, and I want to ask everybody who's here in the physical venue to please just pay regard to the COVID-19 protocols. Everybody would have signed in. There's sanitizer here, there's proper ventilation, and maintain your social distancing as you sit here, and keep your masks on, please. Part of the event is also virtual, so people are dialed into the program, and we're going to be crossing live to them, so I feel like a bit of a news anchor here. I'm in good company because Lance Witten is here as well. So without much further ado, I want to call on Lance Witten to come up and deliver the first part of our interfaith introduction prayer for the ceremony.
Thank you very much, Hassan, and thank you to everyone, and thank you for including me in the ceremony as well. If we all could bow our heads in prayer, please. Eternal, kind, merciful, loving Father, Father of love, almighty maker of heaven and earth, you are the Alpha and the Omega, Father, the beginning and the end. From you we all come, Father, and to you we will all surely return. Father, we bow the knees of our hearts before you this afternoon, bringing to our thankfulness for a fellowship that we could share, Father, in commemoration of our friend, our mentor. And Father, we ask that you bind our hearts together, that you grant unto us peace, Father. You grant unto us a special measure of love and comfort, and allow that we may feel this beautiful and wonderful fellowship, this beautiful and wonderful brotherhood, and that, Father, we can share in some wonderful memories of his life and the impact that he has made. Father, we know that we can do nothing without you. We are nothing without you. And Father, we ask that the works and the impact that Faiez has done and has had on our lives may be offered up, Father, as a sweet-smelling savor at your altar. Grant unto him peace, Father. Welcome him into your bosom, and allow that we may share a blessed and disturbance-free ceremony here today. Grant unto us your peace and your blessing. This we ask of you in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Don't go too far away. We'll see you later again. I want to, now as is customary in Faiz's faith, we open all our events with a prayer. And I want to call on a very good friend of his and our club captain from Woodstock Wanderers, Mr. Muhammad Harris, to come and deliver an opening dua.
Good afternoon, all attendees. Honor of Faiz. As in Lance's words, I'll do the Arabic version. We all pray to one God, Allah, and Isha, for our Talia. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil mursaleen. Sayyidina wa nabiyina wa maulana Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alina Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Rabbi Nawal Maura Faiez Dollie al-Makhum. Allahumma aghfir lahum wa rahamu waskinhum fil jannah. Allahumma aghfir lahum wa rahamu waskinhum fil jannah. Allahumma aghfir lahum wa rahamu waskinhum fil jannah. Allahumma ja'al qabram radiyatun min al-jannah. Salamun qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. We ask Allah to grant him a very high place in the heavens. We ask Allah to pardon him of any sins he might have left on this dunya, as no one is perfect. And we ask him to be raised in heavens with our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let he be in their presence, spread the good deed that he has done on this earth, and let his legacy lay with us, Woodstock Wanderers. Everyone's lives is touched, family, friends, and may this all go on. I'll now end of the dua, and may all your prayers in your hearts be for him accepted. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alina Sayyidina Muhammad wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallim. Inna lillahi wa inna ileihi raaji'oon. Fadlika da'wahum fiya. Subhanaka la tahiyatum fiya salam. Wa akhiru da'wa alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Thank you.
Faiz also encouraged us as a football club to embrace our diversity and our interfaith. And it's something that we continue to do to this day, whether it's meetings or matches or just gathering to reminisce about the days gone by. So I just want to acknowledge a few people. With us in the audience is former Minister of Finance and kind of lifelong activist, Mr. Trevor Manuel. The chairman of the board of the YIP Foundation, Mr. Ihsan Hasnola, and one of our members of the provincial legislature, Mr. Cameron Dugmore, who's also served as a former education MEC. Welcome to the ceremony. I also want to acknowledge our co-founder of Woodstock Wanderers, Mr. Ishmael Harris, our club captain, Mr. Muhammad Harris, and all the members of the Woodstock Wanderers Football Club, and the family of Faiez Dollie is represented today by Mr. Faiez Dollie, his brother, and to all the family at home tuning into this live broadcast. I want to welcome you, and we acknowledge you. Also, Faiz's fiancée, Talia Marcus, and her dad, Norman Marcus. Welcome, everybody. And you'll hear later on in the program, actually right now, from some reflections of the people who worked with Faiez and had a similar experience, though different, to what we experience as a football club with Faiez. So on that note, we're going to cross live to Donovan Daniels, who is the Executive Director of the YIP Foundation. He's going to join us live now on the Zoom platform. Donovan, can you hear us? It's a recording. My apologies. Okay.
I knew Faiez since only late 2018, but it feels like I know him so much longer. And upon reflection, why does it feel like I know him for a lifetime? The answer lies in this. Faiez's selfless acts were timeless. Timeless because what he did touched the soul and spirit of everyone around him. My interaction with Faiez revolved mainly around his passion for youth to participate in the economy. With endless energy and vision, and sometimes endless words, he would describe how every young person who today find themselves surrounded by poverty, exacerbated by poor socio-economic conditions, and sheer lack of opportunity, would one day be able to economically fend for themselves because they are now networked and included in the economy. And so he would go on and on. Sometimes I would be on the same page as he, and oftentimes I was totally lost, but always enthralled by his vision, his yearning, his prayer that all youth would be given the same opportunities. He wanted nothing more, just that. Yet to me, it seemed like an enormous task to get there. What were we to do? Where would the money come from? How would we reach the youth? These were my questions, not Faiez's, because he was a doer, a man of action, less talk, more work. He did not only share because he knew there'd be a little left for him. Often he gave everything he had just to see the other person fulfilled. Our South Africa yearns for leaders of the caliber of Faiez. But let me not digress. I am, however, left with one perplexing question about Faiez. I'm perplexed by it, either because I don't have the answer, or I'm afraid to deal with what that answer will reveal about me. And that question is, why did Faiez cross my path? To have had such a brief encounter with such an amazing human being, and then to be left wondering about my own sacrifice for those who will come after me is profound. You see, if I focus on the youth, I will have to deal with the issue of a sustainable future. Is that not truly challenging? In my moments of quiet reflection, this restless question keeps on surfacing, and I cannot hide from it. When I consider the life of Faiez, I'm reminded of a quotation attributed to Gaylord Nelson. And this is the quote: "The ultimate test of a man's conscience is his willingness to sacrifice something today for future generations whose words of thanks will not be heard." Unquote. If there was ever someone who would pass this test of conscience, it would most definitely be Faiez. His impact on many is timeless, the sacrifices he made will extend to future generations. Let us therefore examine to what extent we are making a sacrifice for future generations. And in our quiet reflections, let us be honest with ourselves, because only then will we be moved to contribute to a sustainable tomorrow. Thank you, Faiez Dollie, crossing my path. May your legacy live forever.
Thank you to Donovan Daniels, who also gives us a little bit of insight into the type of work that Faiez was doing, because he never spoke to us about that. If you weren't going to ask, he was not going to tell you. Typically modest guy. So as we're standing here and as we're sitting here as his Wanderers brothers, we're also learning about the type of stuff. And later you will hear in the program about the YIP Foundation and why it's something worthwhile supporting. And on that note, we're going to cross now to a beneficiary of the foundation, somebody whose life Faiez touched, and that's Taryn de Reek. She's joining us. Oh, he's joining. She. Sorry, Ma, it's very dark in front of me, so. Thank you.
Goeiemorgen, Molweni, greetings all. My name is Taryn de Reek, and it's an honor and a privilege for me to be able to stand here and tell you about the great significant man that came across my way. A legacy, yes, a legacy indeed. A legacy so significant, someone may have to complete. A man like Faiez, young in spirit, ambitious in human form, and a heart as pure as gold. A man that sacrificed everything, with so many stories untold. There were times when one could see how eager he was just to assist, bringing about change in the community. Even if it meant he had no bread and butter, he would ensure the community was well fed. He ensures so many opportunities is granted, serving us to us on a silver platter, especially to those who had financial constraints. He made it possible that opportunities is introduced to all, no matter race, religion, or even the origin. It's true. Imagine a man with a legacy so excellent, reaches many men, many nations, even the president. A man that accomplished to fill his father's shoes. Yes, he did. He took the leap of faith and made everyone realize that it's in you. You just have to activate. Wherever I looked at this man, what did I see? A man so caring, humble, a man like him. Mr. Dollie, how I appreciate and adore all the things you did. Ensure that others are valued above oneself, ensuring the cry of the youth is heard, even if it means until the ends of the earth. Today, looking over this crowd, it speaks volumes. Knowing about the history, it also does. Ensuring that the youth does not stagnate due to circumstances, but rise above the use of opportunities granted. That was Mr. Dollie. Due to this individual, humble man, how honored I am to have known him, sharing laughter, breaking bread, and even fellowship. Met die kleine bietjie donkies, he ensured the community was well fed with education, opportunity, and even success. To his associates, those that knew him, and I know those that did not know his name but heard about him. We have all so many stories untold. But one thing I can guarantee you, there was success, laughter, and even tears. But I do so many times remember stories that I've experienced with him. I recall as a colored young lady coming from Mitchell's Plain, Faiez knew my circumstances, but for him it was like he would sacrifice even if it means it himself. Faiez once called me, I remember this, telling me, Taryn de Reek, I'm on my way to Mitchell's Plain. And my response to him was, Faiez, het reën bullets hier, bly by die huis. But Faiez was so eager to come, and he was so eager to ensure that the community was well equipped for what lies ahead. Not knowing today will be the last time I would have to say. With my words to him was, Faiez, you know what inspires me about you? Sacrificing yourself is what I've learned. Making sure that you humble yourself and place others above your own is what I've learned. A man so passionate, so full of fire to bring about change in a community that does not see change at all. Instead, Faiez wanted to ensure that the poverty-stricken community also receives opportunity. Fear had no hold on him, not at all. Stuk in 'n kar of skuld maak, of solang terwyl jy weet hy moet dit terugbetaal. As long as he supplied the youth with opportunity, that's all that matters. Do not get me talking about what happened at Athlone Stadium, where we were supposed to have only 1,000 students at the certain event. And you know what? It tended to be almost 100,000 if I'm not mistaken. Mandela, I think he turned around his grave and he saluted Faiez, saying, Faiez, you did a magnificent job. Were the partners that was with him, Mr. Trevor Manuel and Mr. Cameron Dagmo. And you know one thing that made me realize that I want to be like this man, is of what his character was and his personality too. His goal was to ensure education, opportunity were granted. We managed to make Mandiba proud, that's one thing I know for sure. Today I'm honored, as a young lady, a colored from Mitchell's Plain, to be standing here today and have met this young man, this young, ambitious man. Might be old of age, but young of heart, that came across my way. Mr. Dollie, a mentor indeed, a friend in need. I salute you.
Thank you so much, Taryn, for those very stirring words to honor Faiez. I now want to call upon Courtney Edwards for a few words paying honor to Faiez. And Courtney will explain in what capacity he got to know Faiez and the impact he had on his life.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ek sien hoe lag Faiez nou. Sure. The best we ever had. You know, let me start with a speech. Otherwise, I'm going to speak about so many memories, and I had to narrow it down to a speech this afternoon. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, including the family members of Faiez Dollie, who's here and online, his life partner Talia, friends and community members. Today, I've been permitted the honor to pay tribute to my friend, my leader, my mentor, Faiez Dollie. Those of you who had the privilege of meeting Faiez will remember the smile on his face when thousands of young people entered the hall for a career expo, and how quickly it became serious when they had to talk about unemployment and the seriousness thereof. He explained that we need to build a bridge. And I asked Faiez, what are you talking about, this bridge? And he said, we need to build a bridge. You know how he goes and explains. And I said, Faiez, explain to me about this bridge. He said, you know, there's young people who enter university and they are fine. And then there are young people who enter the workplace and who go and volunteer and they are fine. But Courtney, there's a missing middle. There's a group of young people sitting at home at the moment. We need to build a bridge of opportunities. We need to build a bridge for them to enter into certain spaces. And that is what Faiez worked hard on. Today I feel certainly sad and a bit confused, but I know that we can all rest assured that Faiez has gained entry into the highest place. As he lived an exemplary life, a life that he lived for other people. I want to quote words from the famous poet, Antjie Krog. Now, I'm quoting from Antjie Krog because Faiez also had a lekker Afrikaans. And if you would speak to Afrikaans, he would say, ja, my bro. He said, on the 3rd of August, he told me, happy birthday, guy. It's no volgende 28. That's the sense of humor that Faiez had. And so the words from Antjie Krog's poet, Pryslied, die sleepsels van sy blare lê wyd, legendaries is hy. Opspoorder van harte. So this was a poem written for Nelson Mandela. And I can quote these words for Faiez. This simply means that Faiez, hy's 'n opspoorder van harte. He had the ability to connect people. Don't know how, he just had the ability. Sy blare lê wyd. Wherever Faiez went, he left a mark in someone's life. Wherever, doesn't matter to who he spoke to. And Faiez never ever spoke negative. He was always a positive person. And even if I write my speeches wrong, that he asked me now to go and stand on the stage and do something, I would come down and I know, I said a few things wrong and say, that was the best speech. That was the best. That was Faiez. He turned people towards each other, for each other. That is the spirit of Ubuntu that we as Africans all strive towards. I met Faiez 10 years ago when I was a learner at Cedar High School in Mitchells Plain. When I look back at old photographs, I often wonder what Faiez saw in me. Ek was baie maar kyk hoe lyk ek nou. So when I look at those pictures, I'm like, Faiez, how's it? And Faiez saw in me that something and things that I maybe still need to discover, but things I never saw in myself. And he really took me through a journey of self-actualization. And for that, I'll be forever grateful to Faiez. As you know, we struggle to find a picture. One single pic to put on social media or somewhere of Faiez. We went all over the place. We called Talia, please help with a pic. We couldn't find one. And we literally had to crop him out of certain pics. But this speaks about Faiez. He was a background person doing all the work, and that is who he was. It speaks about his character. And he never looked for any applause, accolades, any recognition. He will tell you, please go stand there, I will take the pic. That is who Faiez was. And you all probably know that. And all he wanted to do was to contribute and make a difference in the lives of young people. He played a major role in the establishment of the Mitchells Plain Bursary Fund, the Mitchells Plain Education Forum, and the Mitchells Plain Skills Center. And he certainly had a touch. Whatever Faiez touched, multiplied. Whatever. If he touched an event, you'd see people, thousands of people. Taryn was talking about it. Ladies and gentlemen, 8,000 to 10,000 people arrived that day. We were supposed to be in a small hall. We had to move towards Atlant Stadium because there were too many people there. And when doctors diagnosed Faiez with his illness, you would never say that he was ill. And he called me a month ago and he told me, Courtney, I need to get treatment. And I said, okay, but are you still on board? I said, yeah, I'm on board to raise funds. I'm on board. He says, Courtney, I need over 100,000. I said, yeah, we can do it. And he sends me all the medical records and stuff. And I said, okay, Faiez, you know where we're going, eh? He's like, yeah, we know where we're going. And not once did Mr. Manuel turn away and say no. So Mr. Manuel, thank you for what you have done. Thank you very, very much. And everyone who organized. I looked at his pictures and everything, and he told me, Courtney, get me healed so that I can do the work. That is what Faiez wanted. He just wanted to be healed, to do and to make a difference in the lives of people. So today I would like to say that in remembrance of Faiez, we, everyone listening, need to ensure that the unemployment rate drops. That's the one thing we need to do. That's what Faiez wanted. He wanted young people employed. We need to ensure that young people have access to opportunity. That's what Faiez wanted. We need to ensure that no one is left behind. In everything, anyone do, whatever you touch, make sure no one is left behind. That is what Faiez wanted. And so in closing, I would like to thank everyone here today involved. I would like to thank especially Andrew Gasnola, thank you, for your organizing of this memorial, online memorial. Every day you called almost, so thank you very much. And even on my way here, he said, just go and check your GPS. And I went and I changed the whole thing around because I ended the wrong place, but he guided me to the right direction, he knew. So thank you very much, Program Director, as well today, that you are here and to pay tribute to my friend. He will certainly be missed. Rest well, my friend. You have certainly earned it, and you deserve to rest. And I'll quote the words of the famous poet John, who says, and soonest our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and souls delivery. You were certainly one of the best people, Faiez. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Courtney, for that remembering Faiez in the way you have. It seems like Faiez had a modus operandi we're learning today throughout this memorial service for him. And it's certainly something we experienced in the football club. Faiez was the guy who bought us our first kits when we were wondering, how are we going to play in this league now? We don't have kits. And I remember a distinct red and white kit that was way too big for me. And I was thinking, I don't know about this. And Faiez delivered that season's style of kit from Umbro. He didn't ask us for anything. When we were hungry, he bought us food, registered us into a league. So on that note, I want to ask for a message from our club co-founder, Mr. Ishmael Harris, to be delivered by Lance Witten.
Thank you very much, Gesant, and thank you to my Woodstock Wanderers brothers as well for giving me the opportunity to deliver this message on behalf of the club and, of course, on behalf of our co-founder, Ishmael Harris. Our number 9. These are the words of Miley. It is humbling for the Woodstock Wanderers, the club where Faiez Dollie, the club that Faiez Dollie helped form, to be able to be a part of the special tribute to our friend, brother, and teammate. In football, there were great number 9s that have played, and if you look around, there's still a few who still do that job. The number 9 in the team is the striker who is furthest up the field, in the opponent's half, leading from the front. The number 9 holds up the ball, connecting the rest of the team to the attack. And the number 9 is usually the one who gets the goal. In fact, the last time he played for Woodstock Wanderers, Faiez scored 4 goals. We know that Faiez chose the number 9 because he admired Newcastle United and England striker Alan Shearer. And I think he may have been the only Newcastle United striker we knew in Cape Town. He espoused all of those things that went along with being our number 9. Leading from the front, connecting old and new, and getting us to our goals. A few months ago, Faiez and I, Miley, addressed the Woodstock Wanderers 25 years after we formed this club first. Back then, we spoke to a few young men in an effort to get them off the shop corners in Woodstock, enticing them away from sitting idly in the sun looking for mischief. As I know, some of them still look for mischief. This time, Faiez and I were back, older and grayer, and Faiez was able to remind these young men why we forged a way together into a brotherhood that would transcend football and all of our differences. That in our differences, we would find strength, and unity. Today we retire this Woodstock Wanderers number 9 shirt. It belongs to Faiez Dollie, and it will never be worn by another player who would be as worthy of it. To my fellow Woodstock Wanderers, I say, when you look up for the number 9, you will have a different role. You will be leading, but that leadership will be from within all of you. And we will honor him as our brotherhood extends beyond the football field and in service, like our number 9, of the greater good in our communities. And when we score these goals, we'll remember our number 9. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lance. The club's going to frame that shirt on one side, and the front of that shirt, that Umbro shirt, they used to call it the Nachtmerrie shirt because you can't, it was so grey and the pattern was so wild that you couldn't see us on the field. And I think it was designed to confuse our opponents. Paying tribute to Faiez next via Zoom is Nikita Mfinyana. Nikita, can you hear us? If you can just switch, there we go. You may proceed.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to convey my sincere condolences to the family and to Talia. We've lost an amazing person. Faiez was one of a very rare breed of people. I can't think of anyone else who could achieve so much with so little in terms of resources. It's really a skill or to go through what he did with the kind of passion that he carried through was just amazing. I first met Faiez probably about 10 years ago. He came to the place where I work, Business Partners, and I suppose because I deal with some of the workshops for youth on preparing business plans, he was kind of directed to me. And I remember at the time, he did request some funding, but we gave him a very measly amount. I think not more than 200 Rand or 500 Rand, almost like a tick box, because we've had similar organizations coming through and we're not really sure what he could achieve. But he invited me soon thereafter to the City Hall. I think it was one of the first times that he'd had a function for the youth who had just written matric and weren't even sure whether they've passed or not. And it was an eye-opener. It was really, in terms of seeing his organizational capabilities, the activist in him, it was really, yeah, like I say, he could achieve so much with so little. At the time, I thought there's probably must be some machinery that's helping him to organize so many different organizations to come and talk to the youth on different topics. Then one of the things I remember is that, you know, he had his signature red or maroon jersey. It was hot that day, and he had the jersey on. And I said to him, but Faiez, it's hot. Why don't you take off your jersey? And he says, no, I can't. I've hardly slept. I haven't got an iron shirt anyway. It's all wrinkled, so I can't afford to take off this jersey. So, but that's the kind of selflessness that he had. He did everything for everybody else without considering himself. We, after that, spoke a number of times, kind of more or less regularly. I'd say to him, if he's going to call me or come through, let it be on a Friday afternoon when work isn't so heavy. We can spend about half an hour or so strategizing. It never took half an hour. Usually it took about 2 hours, 2 or more. Everybody else would have left the building in business partners, and we're still talking about his big plans, his strategies. And in a lot of ways, I was drawn to the issues that he had with the youth, apart from the importance of what he was doing. It's also the problems that he was facing, almost like a small business. What he needs to do, what should he look at? And he used me as a bit of a sounding board, and I'd often play devil's advocate and tell him, but what about this? Have you thought about that? And it didn't matter how much I threw at him, he was always optimistic. So I'd say things, but what if this doesn't work? And he'd say, but what if it does? Can you imagine the impact this will have on the youth? Can you imagine what this is going to do? Yeah, Courtney and Taryn have already spoken about what happened in Athlone. That day, or no, the previous evening, he had phoned and said, well, they've got a small, not a small, but a sizable hall. They're not sure how many people will come through. We expect at maximum 100 to 200 people. And then later that evening, he phones and says, ooh, you know what, it's quite a lot more now. We've got about 600 people. We have to now hire Athlone Hall. And then later still that night says, shit, we've got a big problem. There's like more than 3,000 people that have already said they're coming. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll have to speak to Trevor. Yeah, and well, we all know what happened there. But even in the midst of that huge crowd, when everybody was in the stadium, and I remember Comrade Tamaran and Trevor talking to the youth, Faiez was in the background. Faiez was busy making copies because there were not enough application forms. And he was driving back and forth with Talia and trying to organize more stuff where he can print. I was amazed at the amount of energy and the ability to stay so humble and in the background. So as we spoke about the things he could do, and as the organization got bigger, he came across other youth organizations that also tried to help the youth. And we started looking at, okay, so what's the kind of impact those organizations have, and what can YUP do? What is YUP's kind of strategic niche proposition? And one of the things he kept saying, but why these organizations, when we look at how much they get in donor funding and so on, and what their actual impact is in placing people, we can do with 1/10 of what they receive and have a much bigger impact. And again, the devil's advocate in me would say, yeah, okay, you've done A, B, C, D because you've not really taken care of your costs. He says, no, I've looked at sending SMSs, I've looked at petrol. I said, what about the food you eat? Have you costed that? Where are you going to? The other organizations look at actual salaries. You've not had a salary. When was the last time you actually got money for what you do? But that's the nature of the person that he was. His health issues, I had a fleeting kind of, he was, I think one of the times he was supposed to come, we were going to have a meeting, and then he didn't come. And after a while, I heard from him, and he said, oh, sorry, I couldn't come. I had to go to hospital. But anyway, it was like he was talking about passing through a filling station and filling up with petrol. And now let's continue talking about what we can do to improve the plight of the youth. With time, things became kind of more and more he had to get into a bigger role in terms of organization, and it had to deal with now having a board, and things were more kind of bureaucratic. And that's the stage that he didn't really like, or the stage where he felt he wanted to do so much more just in terms of the work and not be bogged down in what's the constitution, what should we be doing with, you know, the different rules. His was really, as somebody had previously said, his was really an activist and doing role. And it's something that I think we'll find very difficult, impossible to fill his shoes. But we do need to look at, as his legacy, what can we do to continue the work that he started and has been carrying on so well for so long. And that's the best way to honor his legacy. So I think one of the things we do need to look at is how do we continue that and make what he was so passionate about a reality in terms of youth development, taking them out of unemployment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nikita. Thank you for your warm words, and please do stay on the line, because we're going to now move on to family reflections. And I mean, as I'm standing here, and I'm going to call upon Faiez Dollie to come and speak to us, Faiz's brother. I wanted to ask Faiez, like, did you ever see this guy? He was so busy. Faiez, please join us. Shukran.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would just firstly like to thank everyone for this wonderful event that we can speak about Faiez, and it's so difficult for me because there's so much to say, and you know, I don't know where to begin, but I'll go to the beginning where, you know, growing up in Kensington, and you know, Faiez was 12 years my senior, so he was that big brother that's always been there for me. He's been there for me emotionally and in any way, you know, one could ask for a big brother. And I remember going through school, primary school and high school, and, you know, the first person to come and look at my report after my parents looked at it was Faiez. You know, and I would always think, why? You know, he's so inquisitive, not knowing he actually had a plan for me. And when I was, you know, in standard 8, after receiving my June report, he looked at it, he didn't say anything, and the following day he told me that he's booked me in at Master Maths. And I looked at my report and I'm like, okay, I know why. And fast forward a little bit to matric. The first day of matric, I was sitting in the class, and we were all waiting for the teacher, all the kids waiting for the teacher, and we heard a knock on the front door. And lo and behold, it's Faiez, and I'm thinking, what's he doing at my school? And he calls me, and as I approach him, he says, no, bring your bag. And we get in the car, we take a drive, and I ask him where we're going. I'm supposed to be in class, and he's, you know, it's your last year of school. I want to take you to the best school. And we went to a couple of schools. We decided on a school for my matric final year. And did Faiez actually have the money for that best school? No, he didn't. He said, I'll figure it out during the course of the year, and that's exactly what he did. And after that, I studied, and during the time of me studying, he figured out that the next best thing, and this is in the 90s, mid-90s, he figured out the next best thing, or the big thing, is going to be IT, computers. And, you know, instead of himself wanting to jump on the bandwagon, what he did was he thought, how can I get everyone on this bandwagon? And that's when he opened a company called Dynamic Training Solutions. And when I was done studying, he told me, you know, the market is flooded with what you're doing or what you studied, and why don't you come and do a computer course here with me? And I did that, and when I was done with that, he he told me, why don't you work here? And that's how he shaped my life and steered me onto a road where I could stand on my own feet. And in this way, he was very, very selfless. He saw the best in you. And I just received a message from my sister this morning telling me how much she's missing him, particularly today, because she remembers when she went for a driver's license, she didn't make it the first time, and then she went the second time, she didn't make it again, and she thought, you know what, I'm probably just never going to have a driver's license. And Faiez took her for lessons, but he was very hard on her, and he pushed her and very hard on her, and eventually she had the courage to go again, and then she passed. And all she could think was, I need to get to Faiez, I need to tell him, I need to get to him. And then eventually when she does get to him, she tells him, I've passed, and she's screaming, and she's all excited, and he just looks at her as in like, obviously you passed, you know? Why didn't you see in you what I see in you, you know? And he believed in people in that way. And, you know, we can't thank him enough. And these are things that he just did naturally. It wasn't something, you know, that we would particularly stand out. But later on you would figure, you know, he actually wanted me on this path or that path without saying much. And yeah, and years later, he said to me, you know, this is his plans with regards to youth and getting them into jobs even if they don't earn anything in the beginning, but they've got a foot in the door, they've got education, and now they've got experience as well. And it was difficult understanding him because his mind was filled with millions of phenomenal ideas, and when he explains to you, you sort of get him in the first 10 minutes, but you sort of lose him after that because he's going from one idea to the next, to the next, to the next. And all I could do is just say yes, yes, because he continuously asks, you understand? And I'm like, yes, but I've sort of lost him a while back. And that's what he did until the very end, is just to help everyone and anyone wherever he could. And that's the brother that I always want to remember. Thank you very much, everyone.
Shukran, Zubaid. I'm now going to ask Faiz's fiancée, Talia Marcus, and with her is her dad, Norman Marcus. Talia, can you hear us? Do you want to switch your camera on? There we go. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
You can go for it, Talia, eh?
Okay. Faiez was my life, my whole world. I am so grateful that I got to spend the last 17 and a half years of my life together with such an incredible human being. He was my best friend, my confidant, my therapist, my go-to person for anything and everything, and for the past 12 years, my boss. We were complete opposites in so many ways. Faiez was spontaneous, full of energy, a go-getter, thrived under pressure, and was always so positive. He believed that anything and everything was possible if you just put your mind to it. He was the most loving, caring, considerate, and generous person I knew. He treated everyone with so much grace and respect. He was the greatest listener and would go out of his way, never stopping until he had a solution to solve your problem, no matter how big or small. Nothing was too much for him. He only wanted to help and make a difference. Faiez's passion was to unlock people's true potential. Faiez believed that regardless of one's circumstances or background, given the right tools, guidance, and mentorship, anyone could succeed and reach their goals and dreams. Wherever Faiez went, he would engage with people, listening to their stories, their struggles and triumphs, and would always leave them with his words of wisdom. We started YAP in 2009. For Faiez, YAP was a form of Sadaqat al-Jariyah, voluntary ceaseless charity, for his late father, Faiez Dollie. And that was always front and center of everything that he did. Faiez lived by the motto, doing the right things for the right reasons and in the right way. It was always about making a difference. The last 12 years working together was a roller coaster of a ride. We had our fair share of ups and downs, but we always had each other's back. And at the end of the day, we just wanted to do the best we could. Faiez was a creative genius. The ideas just flowed from him continuously. He had so many ideas, so many projects and plans that he wanted to implement. His passion was contagious, energizing. Nothing fazed him. Nothing was too much. I was always the devil's advocate, but he was always able to erase any of my doubts and put my mind at ease, knowing that together we could achieve anything. For every challenge or obstacle, he always had a solution. Faiez was the most resourceful person I knew. Regardless of how little resources we had, he would always come up with solutions to make things happen. Faiez was a very humble guy. He never wanted to be the center of attention. Instead, he wanted to give others a chance to shine. When asked to look for photographs of Faiez, it was not an easy task. We have so many pictures from over the past 12 years of YAP, but Faiez never wanted to be in the spotlight, in front of the camera, on stage, or in the newspapers. He loved being on the ground, face to face, interacting with the youth, listening to their stories and offering individual personalized advice. He would spend evenings and weekends phoning the youth, making sure that all their questions from the seminars and workshops were answered. Faiez was never a numbers person. It was always quality over quantity. And even with all our events and workshops, it didn't matter how many people attended, as long as those that did make the effort to get there were provided with a quality and impactful experience. Faiez dedicated over a decade of his life to youth upliftment. And even when he got sick in 2015, it was hard for him to stop and focus on his health. He couldn't wait to get healthy again and back to helping the youth and making a difference. He never spoke about his illness, never wanting anyone to feel sorry for him. And he was like that till the very end, always positive and always believing that we could beat it and get through it. He still had so much he wanted to accomplish and do, but we all know that he did accomplish so much and that he did make a difference in the lives of so many. Faiez has left a massive void in so many people's lives, and he will be sorely missed. Thank you.
Yeah. I've known Faiez for almost as long as Talia has, but only really got to know him well in the last few years. I want Talia to know that I and Talia's mother, Cynthia, were always thrilled to see and witness the true love, caring, and companionship that Faiez showed to Talia, which was always reciprocated by Talia. This was especially evident in the last months of his far too short life, when Talia put aside everything and gave him her absolute attention in such a tender, kind, and loving way. God bless you, Talia. I'm proud of you. Yes, there were serious disagreements and many heated discussions during their many hours of working together on their beloved YAP projects. But the admiration, warmth, and love that they had for each other always won in the end. I can best describe Faiez as a mensch. Yes, he was a person of integrity and honor, a decent, responsible person with admirable character traits. He was certainly someone to admire and emulate. Faiez was a person regarded by one and all as being compassionate, upstanding, and having strength of character. He was a gentleman in the true sense of the word. Faiez was a very generous person to everyone that he had contact with and never ever asked for anything in return. It was his basic philosophy that extended widely to all facets of his life. He gave of his time, his wisdom, his experience, and he always gave of his wealth and never ever expected a return on these investments. He was also a very strong family man. He loved all his family unconditionally. Faiez was a very likable and popular person, which is evident in the many friendships that he developed in his lifetime. These friendships that arose from his social, personal, sporting, and business activities were cherished with great pride by Faiez. Faiez, you have left a large void in all our lives, but your legacy will live on forever and always be an inspiration to us. I love you, Faiez. We all love and miss you, Faiez. May God Almighty protect you and cause his light to shine upon you forever.
Thank you very much, Talia and Norman. Now we're going to the a part of the program where the people who worked very closely with Faiez, and it's people that really supported him in his journey of what he tried to achieve. And without their support, many of the projects he wanted to realize wouldn't have been possible. So I'm going to start by calling on a member of the provincial legislature at our, in the Western Cape, Mr. Cameron Dugmore, to come and say a few words.
Thank you very much, Gesant, and greetings to everyone, especially Talia and her father at home. I really would like to pass condolences to you, Talia. I think the way that you described your relationship and the way your dad described the relationship is what I saw from the outside, and I think your loss is really, really hard, and I think you had something special that many others would like to have. Typical me, my battery just died, and I was about to ask Courtney, as I would normally have done, Courtney, could you just go to the car and charge my phone for a while? But if I'd done that, you would have missed Talia. So, Gesant, all I'm going to ask you when I get to 5 minutes, which I was given, just go like that. Okay. Yeah, I mean, people have used adjectives to describe Faiez, which are very accurate. An incredibly selfless person, passion like you've never seen before, energy, commitment, and an incredibly creative and innovative person. It was when I was with Trevor, when he was the Minister for National Planning and also had a Mitchells Plain constituency, that I first met Faiez, which was, I think, just after around 2010, somewhere like that. And we had this long discussion, and he had made it very clear that the one thing that we should try and do in Mitchells Plain would be to work with youth. And out of that came the Education Summit that Minister Manuel was centrally involved in. And out of that came the Bursary and Role Model Trust, came the Skills Center, and then actually the Education Forum itself. All of them, or definitely two, survive today. I think we just need to reconvene the broader Education Forum. And I think that's a major tribute to Faiez, because when I was in Trevor's office, he was sometimes in the Union Buildings and sometimes at the Good Hope Buildings here in Cape Town in the Presidency. And I remember that I sort of described it as two groups of three. It would be Ahmad Simar, and then it would be Faiez and me. And because we all had this weakness for nicotine, we would go out of the Good Hope Building. I don't know if Trevor actually knew, but and we would sit somewhere outside and talk. And maybe we'd go and get a Gatsby to share, while we were talking. And then there was another three. That was Courtney, me, and Faiez. So there was like this three. And I tell you, all the background work on all of these things was there with Faiez at the center of it. So that was the kind of person he was. That was what his impact was actually very, very real, because it was about the youth. I think it started off as MP Mitchells Plain Youth Unemployment Prevention Program. And I said to Faiez, but Faiez, how are you actually going to prevent youth unemployment? Because that's like a very serious task that you're taking on. And then he would go into a detailed explanation about that. And one thing which I think was missed by many people was that one of the key interventions that he talked about was trying to get young people while they were in school to choose the right subjects. And he explained, these are the sectors where there's employment available, but people need this, to get into that. So it was a very intensive process. And so it wasn't fantasy. It was actually practical, and all that was needed was more people that would be able to get to younger people at that stage of their lives and advise them. And it's just tragic that the resources required to actually do that were not there. I mean, people have spoken about the anecdotes. I mean, and everyone's spoken about Athlone Stadium. I'll just give a 30-second memory of that. I was having my hair cut somewhere in Claremont, and I knew that I had to be at the Athlone Civic. And my car was being serviced at the same time, so I actually asked the hairdresser, listen, I have to get to this. So she said, okay, she doesn't have a client. So she took me. We got in a car because I was running out of time, and we got there, and there were just, I promise you, not hundreds of people, but there were thousands of people in the street. So I said, yeah, I wonder what's happening here, because I obviously didn't think it was the event, but there were hundreds and thousands. And, you know, the rest is history. We had to call Patricia DeLille to ask to have the stadium open. I don't know if Trevor did that or I. We were obviously not going to call J.P. Smith, but, you know, and Patricia was very helpful. And we got the stadium open, and Courtney was saying, no, just sing, man, just like you got to entertain it, and more and more. So, Taryn, I don't know if it was 100,000, but that stadium was full. There must have been at least 10,000. And then the careers exhibitions in Barrydale, and Talia and Faiez going to Barrydale is incredible. There was a plan to like roll it out all over, you know, just like this huge energy. And, you know, it's you feel bad because you weren't connected so much to Faiez in the last days, but it seems there's a whole nother part that I'm only hearing about now, the institutionalization of YAP. And one thing, and I'll end with this, is that, you know, I often had to speak to young people, and part of the YAP philosophy, I just always say to young people, if a young person is out of school, there are 5 things that you should be doing. Number 1, you should be studying further. So someone had left at grade 9 or 12, studying further, number 1. Number 2, starting your own business, whether it's like having your own Uber in Melkfontein, going to shop for people in Stilbaai, and so on and so forth, selling airtime, selling this, selling that, number 2. Number 3, if you're lucky enough to find a job, just grab it. That's a CV, that's a reference. You've got to do number 3. Number 4, volunteer. I actually thought Faiez was pretty much a volunteer for most of his life. The point that the other speaker raised about when last did Faiez get a salary. And then number 5, this vision about just traveling. Middle-class kids get sent on gap years all over the world, but just a simple travel of taking young people from Cape Town to Barrydale, taking young people like we're going to do tomorrow up to Table Mountain. I mean, those are the things that inspire. So I think what is needed is the resources. You can have the NYDA, the youth wage subsidy, all of these things. But what you really need is to resource people that can inspire and support young people face to face. And that is what Faiez did. And those individual examples of how he inspired need to be replicated and resourced and support. I love Faiez. Talia, the two of you were so special together. It's incredibly sad. And yeah, just realize that there's more than appreciation. There's love for everything that you guys did together. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. I think your phone battery needs to die more often. That is really inspired. This is well done. Very well done. I said your phone battery needs to die more often. That is very inspired. Well done. The next, we've got a recording from Mr. Ahmad Chotia, and he is the principal of Glendale High and also a co-chair of the Mitchells Plain Bursary Trust. Okay.
Okay, let us see if I do it this way. Maybe then okay. Good afternoon, assalamu alaikum. Talia, Auntie Afia, siblings, nieces and nephews of Faiez, our Mahum, as well as Andrew Ihsan, the chair of YIP, former Minister Trevor Manuel, patron of the Mitchells Plain Bursary and Role Model Trust, and Dr. Fred Roberts, and all the esteemed community members who are part of this virtual memorial for the late Faiez Dollie, who was the CEO of YIP. I am indeed humbled and honored to share a few words about a very special person to all of us, the late Faiez Dollie. And may I just add that Faiez would most certainly have been most embarrassed by these formalities and fuss that he would perceive us to be making about him. Maaf Faik, but this is so necessary because you have really, inspired most and all of us. I knew you as a most humble, respectful human being, filled with taqwa and iman. You were a great listener and implementer. Whatever ideas we came up with, Faiez would listen, shake his head in agreement and say, I think that would work. Then he would go away and make it happen and definitely improve and expand on it. An example of that is, I'm just thinking of the 2010 Education Summit in Mitchell's Plain. We expected about plus minus 200 participants to attend. Faiez and his team and the late Ahmad Siman managed to gather more than 800 delegates from a very broad spectrum. Everybody, who did something in Mitchell's Plain turned up at that great event. Faiez was a youth empowerment activist. He really empowered the youth, the young people of today, and a great role model to them as well. His passion was for his concern for all the struggling, underprivileged youth in different communities. He wanted to ensure that they were all gainfully employed or at least entered tertiary education, and that they were also safe. I remember when Faiez walked into my office as the principal of Glendale High with a sling bag across his shoulder. I think his laptop must have been in it. And a huge outdated phone. Although we had cell phones in that time, Faiez had this huge phone. And he would come and discuss and ask you, what are your matrics of last year doing? And that was a most embarrassing question. Why do you ask that question? We're done with him, They moved on. So yes, he reminded us principals and teachers that our tasks, our responsibilities did not end when our children matriculated or dropped out of school. We had to still follow up and ensure that they were gainfully employed or in a tertiary education and that they were safe. So that was a great reminder to all of us. So all Faiez would ask them, okay, sir, just give me those names and then I would follow up. And he would make a few phone calls on that huge phone of his. And then, lo and behold, next week Faiez would be back and say, sir, I've contacted all the students. Do you know so-and-so is still at home? They need to rewrite the exams. They need to do this, that, and the other. And he had a full sense of what all those young people needed. And he was really the champion of that, the second chance project that we had in Mitchell's Plain, and I suppose in other areas as well. So Faiz's legacy is really selfless leadership, love for the community, and always humble, quiet, his quiet way, looking for opportunities to serve. And it wasn't about him making a big buck or whatever. Sometimes, he really struggled, but it wasn't about him doing this for the money. He did it for the love of his community, for empowering the youth, guiding and steering them to success and safety. Faiz was never a victim. He accepted all challenges with faith and dignity. And I'm thinking here of his illness. He was so positive about it. You could not even feel sorry for him because he would speak to you about what we need to do next. So may Allah Almighty grant Faiz the reward of Jannah, heaven, for his service to humanity. He was really our genie in a bottle. The small bottle, if you rubbed it, this huge personality came out to serve. Faiz, love you, brother. Thank you for inspiring me. And I really wish you a high place in Jannah, inshallah. I am Ahmad Chotia, the co-chair of the Mitchell's Plain Bursary and Role Model Trust. I'm also the former principal of Glendale, as I see. and I'm also a former executive member of the Progressive Principals Association, and currently, ministerial appointee of the Falls Bay TVET College Council. I'm mentioning all this because this is where Faiez really also made a difference, you know, and he was always happy to help. So I want to say to Faiz's family, you know, thank you for sharing him with us. And to Talia, yeah, I always saw you, you know, they say behind every man is a good woman. And in this case, next to this wonderful man, we had a wonderful woman. May Allah also bless you and make it easy on you, inshallah. Shukran. Thank you, Andrew, and shukran for allowing me this opportunity. I thank you.
Shukran. As we, that's a very nice segue to introduce our next speaker, Andrew, who is the chairman of the board of the UP Foundation that Faiez. Did I get that wrong, Andrew? Okay. To please come and say a few words, and then. Oh yeah, sorry, it's recorded. I got. There's this COVID brain fog, please, people. It does hit you at the strangest of times. So, Mr. Maestro, if you can please play that message.
A few weeks ago, I was fortunate enough to spend time with Faiez. It was soon after the unrest and the riots in South Africa. But in those moments, Faiez reminded me about the optimism of the moment, about the patriotism that many South Africans have shown, and ultimately his deep love and appreciation for the country. But not only that, his commitment. In those moments, after talking to Faiez about his health, his well-being, I was not struck by the ravages of his health or his body, but by his determination and grit to do good for others. That is who Faiez Dollie was and is to all of us, a man of integrity, consistency, and service. And in these passing weeks, since Faiez has passed on, I'm reminded about that man of integrity, a man who many of us admired, many of us was able to support, but ultimately a man who helped countless people, a man who confronted the hopelessness of our country and the communities that are ravaged by unemployment, inequality, and poverty, a man who was not looking for quick wins, but was meaningfully driven to help others. And I think in this way, his venture with Talia through YUP and through YIP was focused on helping others from the various town hall communities and society at large that they touched. What struck me most about everything they did was that they were able to collaborate and bring partners together, unlike anyone I've ever seen. And I think that was in Faiez and is in all of us, the ability to partner. And as I'm reminded, sitting in this memorial service today, Faiez Dollie is an example, an exemplar of what is possible in spite of challenges, in spite of circumstances. And it's a reminder of all the young people that YIP has impacted and the work that continues in our communities through their initial work. In preparing for this memorial service and just reflecting on who Faiez was, I was struck by a piece of writing by Kipling from a poem called If. And it reminds me so much about who Faiez was and is, and the work that he started. And I'd like to share a few passages from that poem. I quote, "If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the wall which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, will be a man, my son. Those words are not just words when it comes to Faiez Dollie. He truly was an exemplar of a man and of a citizen and a patriot, and a man who gave so much of himself, a man who gave to communities, to organizations, to individuals, to families, to young people in distress, and he always gave. There was never any doubt. A few weeks when I sat with him over coffee, not too far from his home, we were reflecting about the things he was doing to try and help young people, even though he was battling his health crisis, even though he was struggling with his energy levels, he was still doing good, still making an impact. And that is the man I know Faiez from the moment I met him with Talia many years ago over a cup of tea. That is who the spirit of Yip is, and that is what we need in this moment. And so I would just like to thank Talia and the Dollie family for sharing a man like Faiez with all of us and enabling such important work in communities that many of us have never even seen, never even visited. But in those moments, Faiez, whenever he entered in a community, he didn't see challenges, he always saw opportunities. Even when we had thousands of people at Athlone Stadium or hundreds in community halls across the Greater Cape, he didn't see any challenges. He only saw opportunities and the need to follow up, the need to engage, the need to have personal contact with young people in distress. And so again, to the Dollie family and Talia, I thank you, and you remain in our hearts and prayers. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Andrew. Up next, I can just imagine the kind of phone calls the following speaker got from Faiez Dollie, knowing Faiez the way I did. And often it would probably have meant being, he would put you on your toes. So without further ado, Mr. Trevor Manuel.
Thank you very much, Sant. Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Namaste. It's a celebration of the life of Faiez Dollie. It's a celebration of perhaps one of the most complete and remarkable activists I've encountered. And I say that because of the amount of love that we shared, and we could share it because we recognize in Faiez the best of what we'd like to see in ourselves and frequently don't attain. He was a presence in all of our lives, not lightly or occasionally, but genuinely and deeply present in a style that inadvertently pricked our own consciences. To this, we could only respond with a question: how does he do it? His mission unashamedly was to measurably improve the lives of young people by creating opportunities where none seemed to exist. He set his sights on those who frequently appeared to have been forgotten by society or part thereof: the community, the school, the sports club. Faiez was the champion of the forgotten people. And he was able to do this keeping Woodstock Wanderers in one place, and this life that so impacted us in quite another place. But he was so full and complete and determined to deliver. I suspect that, like me, many of you would not be able to recall precisely how and when Faiez became a feature of our lives. And both Courtney and Cameron spoke about 2010, the Education Summit, and that clearly was when Faiez became a part of my life. I've never quite figured how he was so important a part of what happened in Mitchell's Plain. I mean, like me, he's a Kensington boy. Like me, he didn't school in Mitchell's Plain, but education in Mitchell's Plain became such an important part of his life. And it was far more than just the relationship between him and the late Ahmad Samar, there was a different kind of bond, a different opportunity, and he responded to that opportunity in the most remarkable way. Part of what Ahmad Chotia was talking about, this guy with a big phone who walks into his office and say, what have you done about the people who were in your grade 12 last year? But in the same way, when we needed to start the bursary trust, and some principals were pretty lax, it was Faiez who said, I'll do this. Who walked into their offices and got them on side. Nobody asked by what authority he was doing it. Faiez had the ability to walk into people, and I think, Andrew, your Rudyard Kipling poem speaks to that, his ability to walk into the office of the principal and say, sorry, what are you doing about your children? I could never quite work out how I got drawn into so many of Faiez's initiatives. I live in Joburg. Now, I could only participate when I was here, but when I think about the many different things, the second chance programs that Ahmad was talking about, so many different schools at Mitchell's Plain. Nikita spoke about the City Hall, which was more than once. There was a Lydia Center in Woodstock. I mean, you could just roll through this. Philippi, Kailicha, this stuff happened all over, and Faiez drove this with passion and energy and distinct non-racialism. And then there were these career fairs. And it was a strong motivation. I mean, children who go to schools in townships don't have the choice. They can't see what the career opportunities are. And unless you take it to them, unless you present it in ways that people can engage with, young people don't see what happens after that big step of having completed grade 12. And so getting into schools was a big, big part of what Faiez did and wanted to do. And in fact, in the last discussion, I think it was about 10 days before he passed, we'd spoken before about trying to do career options online, trying to package it in ways where young people could see this and relate to the professionals on the other side who were talking to them as individuals. And he said to me, you know, I've made a lot of progress. I'm going to launch this thing. I may just take a bit of time out to deal with this health issue, but we're going to do it. And it's still unfinished. And I think it's fundamentally important that that project be completed. And then there was the IT training. Taryn spoke earlier, and I remember her as this volunteer in St. Philip's in Woodstock, working and being unleashed with IT skills, because what was once Faiez's business became a passion. And the ability to connect with young people and provide post-school opportunities was such an important part of his life. And then there was the libraries project. I don't know if it was in one of the two groups of three, but I know that I got drawn into an organization called the Cape Town Association of Candidate Attorneys by Faiez. And they were auctioning stuff to raise money for libraries in Mitchell's Plain and Kailicha. And it was Faiez and his passion that dragged me there to people I didn't know and have had no contact with subsequently. And I remember being present at the launch of 6 libraries in Mitchell's Plain and Kailicha. And it had Faiez's DNA all over it. And it meant working with the school, the principal, the SGB. It meant working with the NGOs, like one called the Bookery. And it meant finding funds and then creating the opportunities for people to have, for young people to have access to books. It's the most remarkable story of an energy and a passion and a determination to deliver. As we know, Faiez never tired, regardless of the circumstances that others may have seen it as adversity. Now, let's not for a moment suggest that all of these were these mass events, Taryn. Sometimes we know that the organizers outnumbered the students who pitched. But it didn't ever dim Faiz's enthusiasm. And sometimes those small numbers, well, you couldn't be there and not speak. It went ahead as planned, and the young people who were there were engaged properly, and many of them found employment later. It was the most remarkable determination that we saw. I'm not going to mention Athlone again, save to say this, and I'm not going to debate Taryn on the numbers. It was a massive event. It was a massive event. And I arrived from Joburg that morning, and on the way to Athlone, Faiez was talking to me, and for the first time, I heard him overwhelmed. There wasn't place for an ant in what was then already the Dulcie September Hall. And we then had to move quite quickly to get Patricia DeLille to instruct that the stadium be opened. So you've heard that story too many times today. The part of it I think is the most important was that a very proud Faiez could call me later and say, we've completed the questionnaires and spoken to everybody who was there. A number of people who attended, found placement, found training opportunities, and all of them were put on a database that was probably put together by Faiez, Talia, and Taryn. And that's a remarkable story. You didn't do it as an event. It was part of a process, part of a belief system, part of a commitment. You see, and as Talia said, Faiez was an ideas person. He was a creative, and so there were all of these ideas, and not all of them were well considered either. There were a number of crazy ideas, and you kind of thought, well, okay, this is what comes now. The worst ones were probably already shredded by Talia before they got here. But that was the ideas person. That was the engine that was working. It was what Zubayd was talking about, the engine of ideas that was working all the time. But that's what creatives and that's what risk takers do. And if you didn't have that, if we all went along and only did what we were comfortable with, you wouldn't have the change anywhere. And part of celebrating Faiez is celebrating the quality of change and the impact that he had on the lives of so many. As friends of Faiez and Talia, we understood over time that they expected nothing for themselves. You see, there was no playbook. There was no funds. There was just a sheer determination of Faiez and Talia in tow, focused on the very best values of service in the lives of others. It's unclear what they lived off. However, none of this dimmed their enthusiasm or commitment. Those that interacted with Faiez, whether often or on the odd occasion, will all testify to that enthusiasm and drive. It's his smile and positive spirit that they remember, including over the past 6 years since his health failed. When I spoke to Talia 2 weeks ago today, the day after Faiz's passing, she made a comment that had such a profound impact on me. She said part of it in the tribute today. She said that because they had each other and they had purpose, they didn't need a social life. It's the most incredible commitment of two people to each other and a cause that I've ever encountered. So let me repeat, we gathered to celebrate the life of a truly remarkable activist who deeply touched our lives. Many of us come from an activist background. If we try and reach into ourselves and try and frame in our minds what the attributes of high-quality activists ought to be, we're going to find all of these attributes in the way in which Faiez lived his life. Vision, drive, energy, creativity, resilience, tirelessness, optimism, networks, trust, selflessness. I mean, the networks, the way in which he brought, I described this with the libraries, but there's Nikita there. Ahmad spoke about the False Bay College. At all of these events, every college would be there. Everybody who had something to offer had been convened, and that was how he set about his life. Now, I didn't ever know what Faiz's ideological bent was. And he didn't talk religion much to me. But what I've never heard him do is to repeat hollow slogans. I've never heard him pretend that he's read all the classic political works. I've never seen him dressed in a different political slogan T-shirt every single day. But I do know what Faiez delivered in the lives of people. And that's what made him so exceptional, so different. I knew what the direction of travel was that Faiez would bring into the lives of people. I found a short paragraph this week, and when I read it, Faiz's life jumped from the page at me. It's interesting also because the author is actually unknown. It's been incorrectly attributed to a Nobel laureate, but it isn't from him, Camus. Sharing it here is even more special because as we concentrate on the words and their meaning, we don't need to be distracted by the author. It's the words and meaning, and I'm saying, I read this and it speaks to who Faiez was, and I want to share this. In the midst of hate, I found there was within me an invincible love. In the midst of tears, I found there was within me an invincible smile. In the midst of chaos, I found there was within me an invincible calm. I realized through it all that in the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. And that makes me happy. For it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me there's something stronger, something better, pushing right back, unquote. That love, that smile, that calm, that summer, and that happiness was Faiez. That pushing back against the tribulations in the world was always Faiez Dollie. He's fought the good fight. May he rest in peace, and may we all try and emulate his example in whatever way we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Manuel. We've saved the best for last. We drew into the end of our program, but I want to... My pa het my goed grootgebring, Trevor. But you know, working at the university, and when you arrive the first day and you try out how it's going to be received, and you refer to first names, don't do it. It's prof, it's doctor, it's so. So ek het my lesie geleer daar by EVK. But we saved the best for last, and I know that Andrew had spoken to us earlier via multimedia, but now I want to call him onto stage to speak to us about an exciting announcement.
Thanks, Hasant. Just very briefly, I think Courtney touched on the fact that through the collective efforts of many, we raised funds to support Faiz's sort of recovery, with a view that he would help young people once more. And over the past sort of 2 weeks, we've been having internal discussions with the people who've donated and the people in the spirit. And, I'm reminded about a conversation Talia and Faiez had with me about doing good to honor those who have passed on. And I think in honor of Faiez, what we have at the moment is we have a bit of seed funding, and we're going to be working with the Mitchells Plain Bursary Role Model Trust. It's quite a mouthful. So we'll be working with the trust around establishing a bursary to support young people to access opportunities. And this is in honor of Faiez Dollie. Thank you.
It's really good news. And I'm not going to take up too much time. We've been sitting here for an hour and a half, and our time has come to a close here. But I think what we've heard today is a reflection of a life well lived. A short life perhaps, but a short life very well lived. And I think it inspires all of us. And it becomes incumbent on all of us during a time in the world where it's almost our World War III, you know? And we find 20 years into a century, history repeating itself, of illness, of back then wars. And we need to look deeper. You know, we need to look beyond the materialism, and that's what Faiez taught us. How can we harness the good in people, the common humanity, and work selflessly for each other and with each other? So on that note, I want to thank everybody who attended this physically sitting here and in cyberspace, this very special occasion in our lives. These are the lives Faiez touched. And I want to thank you and tell you to be safe when you travel in your car, but also as we negotiate our way out of this crisis. Thank you.